Welcome back. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. This is a recording from a previous training that I had actually done on Zoom. With that, I hope you find this helpful. If you have questions, please feel free to toss those down in the comments. If you enjoy it, be sure to subscribe. And with that, let's get started. I started out in real estate and I started out as an agent. For anybody who doesn't really know me, I'm a licensed agent. I run an agency, I run training programs, courses, all that fun stuff, a few different groups. Partnered with Shane on the Real Estate Marketing Conversion Academy. And I know a lot of you guys from there, but I know some of you are still unfamiliar. So I started out in real estate and really I had no idea what I was doing. Basically, I had heard that cold calling was a good way to start generating business. This was like after the crash in 2008 and whatnot. And so I decided to go that route. And that's how I learned to train ISAs. I started learning by cold calling, by being my own ISA. The ISA was not even in mind at that point. Little did I know where I'd end up today now, teaching everybody else around the world how to fix their systems and processes, doing trainings and scripts and all that fun stuff. So I have a very love-hate relationship with phone sales in general. Like I said, I started by calling and cold calling and mainly expireds. And I had like no idea what I was doing when I was getting started with expireds. I literally began by pulling the expireds manually from the MLS each morning, and I would look them up one by one using whitepages.net. So that was how I was calling my expireds. I didn't know about dialers. I didn't know about the data that you could buy or anything like that. It was pretty fun. So I spent as much time between calls as I did when somebody picked up the phone, right? Because I'm constantly going and trying to find somebody to call. Then when I find somebody to call, I've got to call them and do all that fun stuff. So, but I can remember one call specifically. I wanted to mention this one. There was this guy and he had a property to list, right? I actually got in touch with one of the expireds. And I can remember like pleading with him, like playfully, but at the same time, still pleading with him just to give me a shot to list his property. And I would love to tell you that I handled that awesome and every objection was easy, but that was not really the case. I was flailing like a fish out of water. So dodging, weaving any questions or concerns that he was tossing my way. I was trying to field them, but I really just had no idea what I was doing. And eventually he told me no in the kindest, stern way that he could to get me off the phone. So I had clearly upset him to some extent with my persistence and my enthusiasm, but I wasn't going to give up, right? On to the next one. This went on for, probably a week or two as I slowly improved. No, I'm kidding. I really wasn't improving. I continued to just face rejection after rejection and no after no. And I had this moment where it was like, all right, I don't really know if this is going to work, right? I had no experience with cold calling. I just held it in my mind that every no was one step closer to a yes, because I heard that on a YouTube video or something. So until my wife was basically like, are you actually getting better? Or is this getting better or whatnot? So that's fair from her because we were newly married and living in my brother's basement so I could get started as a real estate agent. So that was fun. So I was more than willing to do the work that others wouldn't, right? Everybody always says that, like, you got to be willing to do the work that others won't if you want to have results that others don't have. But the problem was I wasn't capable. I didn't have any training. I didn't have any experience. I was brand new. And all I had was a ton of tenacity and persistence and grit, right? That was it. And I'd recently heard about these trainings that were coming to town. So I started to look into that and I found out it was $800, which at the time I didn't have $800 to spare. Again, I was living in my brother's basement and I figured whatever, I'll just put it on a credit card. And we did. And I wasn't interested in playing small. I just, I guess I figured if I got into real estate, it was to make a bunch of money. I think that's why we all get into real estate, right? And so I went for it and I jumped into that training. And the training was crazy, right? It came and it blew my mind. The scripts, the practice, like being with other agents. This is really the first time that I've been around top producers and whatnot. Seeing their skill levels and knowing like these are the competitors in the market. Like these are the people that are calling expireds and for sale by owners against me. And now they're in the same room practicing the same scripts. So that really kind of got me fired up. I mean, same scripts, same game plan. Like I knew there was a chance that I could actually win in this market. So at the end of the program, they offered us an upgrade, $12,000 for coaching. And of course, I signed up for the monthly option and jumped in. I literally had like enough money at that point for like 3 months. And I was like, well, if it works, then that won't be an issue anymore. So I did. And I hired my first coach, and he started out role playing with me, right? He was throwing objections at me. He was throwing situations at me, all kinds of stuff, just basically testing me to see like where I was skill wise, which we both quickly agreed was minimal. So we ended up building from the ground up, just treating me like I was brand new, which I was, and going from there. So he gave me new scripts, new objection handlers, and told me to go find someone to role play with, and that he'd see if any of his other clients might be interested in it as well. So at that time, I was practicing my scripts. I was with a role play partner every morning at 7:30 a.m. And I would be on the phones dialing by 8 a.m. Is anybody else out there currently doing that? Making the cold calls every single morning, trying to stir up business? It was definitely a challenge to start your day out that way. But it was fun because it turns out there's like rules for role play. So when I would do these role plays, you're supposed to let the other person win. And I learned that after 2 to 3 people had basically stopped role playing with me. They didn't want to work with me anymore. You're supposed to let them win after like 2 to 4 objections handled. And I thought that I was just really good and hard to convert, but they all thought I was a jerk. So that was another learning experience. But slowly, things started to click. Things were starting to look better. I was starting to book appointments and starting to book them kind of consistently. I was using a dialer, all that fun stuff. And then the best part, when you get on a listing appointment, they're basically the same objections that you just learned to handle on the cold calling. So I began setting more appointments, taking more listings. I broke the 6-figure mark. It was not my first year, but just a hair past. And I ended up like on this roller coaster, if you will, where I would generate the new business, then I have to take care of it. And then I'd generate more, and then I'd have to take care of it. And it was like just a ridiculously painful cycle. I'm sure if you're an agent, you've probably been there before, at least when you started and whatnot. But around that time was when the Wonder Boy showed up on the scene with an ISA department. And this was, if you haven't heard of him, Tim Heil. And I believe that was actually the headline, like Wonder Boy or Miracle Boy or something like that, on the Outfront magazine that month. And Tim was killing it with ISAs. And he had a partner, Sam, who ran the ISA team, and they were basically having him go out on the appointments and him run the ISA team. And this is basically when ISA started to really come on the scene for everybody. I want to say it's around like 2012. It started to be like, or 2013, it started to be a big deal. I know that's when KW started pushing it at that point. And then they started offering services to others. And I started looking into getting an ISA because I'm like, okay, well, this could help me get off that cycle, right? And I decided against it and instead hired a transaction coordinator because I expect ISAs were expensive. And so I figured if I can get a transaction coordinator to manage the paperwork side of my business, I could call more and close more sales. Not long after that, I actually had my first marketer call, which I was just, when I was going through this the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that I had been called by a marketer when I was a newer agent. And it was somebody with an ISA department that was basically, they're willing to call expireds and for sale by owners. They're willing to handle all my leads, in which at that time I didn't have any leads. I wasn't really paying for them. I was purely cold calling, doing expireds for sale by owners and all that. And so I asked if I could have a call with their ISA to role play with them and see if they could actually do anything. No, they did not have that kind of skill. So I passed on that one, but a little bit of Googling and found out that marketing agency had a ton of bad reviews. Basically, they promised everybody in the world the same thing they promised me, that their ISA department would do this and that and the other thing, and they dropped the ball. And their clients rarely made it more than 2 to 4 months and wanted refunds. So later on, I was starting my business over because my wife had just found out she was pregnant with our second kid while our first one was 9 months old. So we moved to the other side of the state to be closer to her family, and my local real estate career was kind of over at that point. I had to start over, right? That's when I decided to join a team and learn maybe some marketing, some other strategies and tactics. And I want to say it was about 2 months later, I was running the lead generation department for that team. And my first day, they told me I'd be taking over the ISA department. So that was fun. They wanted me to grow it because they had one ISA who, as it actually happens, was an ISA that worked for Tim Heil and Sam back in the day. And so I went to work. A couple hours later, we were at an interview with an ISA that I had found. And I could tell she was like a really good fit. She had a lot of potential. She was eager to get started, super talented. And this was like one of the first times that I had seen somebody talented from the hiring role, right? And I looked at the previous like director of that department because he was there to train me and whatnot. And I was trying to say like, hey, should we hire? Like, what should we do? And he just said, it's your department. And so I took a leap and I hired her. And we started training the next day. And I did the same stuff that my coach did with me all those years ago. We started with scripts, objection handlers. We role played and just so on and so on every single day in the beginning. We were going over the scripts, the objection handlers role playing, scripts, objection handlers role playing, just over and over and over, making sure that those were really apparent in the business, right? Making sure that she was understanding them, understanding why we said what we said, when we said it, the way we said it, how fast we said it, how slow we said it, everything. So as time went on, she required less and less training. And if she had a question, I got a message, right? And or we'd jump on and I'd answer it, or I'd shoot her back a message. And she started booking a ton of appointments. Like, I think our ISAs at that point were booking around 35 appointments a month, listing appointments. They were completely focused on listings at that point. So this was my first experience, like training somebody who was like my responsibility under me in the department, which was exciting and scary at the same time. But thankfully, like the previous director had recommended that I document the process. So I was keeping track of what I was doing, when I was doing it, and the scripts and everything. And that came in really handy as we started to grow. And I went on to hire and train over 100 inside sales agents in that role. Not all of them worked out, but I learned a ton. I learned what works, more importantly, what doesn't work, and what to look for and what to watch out for, because those are also very key. So I tell you guys this basically so you can understand a little bit of what I went through to be able to recruit and to hire and to train ISAs and sales agents even to be successful, right? Like, this wasn't a spur of the moment idea. I didn't just decide like, I'm going to build an ISA company. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, do that. I started in the trenches myself. I made the calls myself. I taught a lot of others to do the same. And I became friends with a lot of the inside sales agents, even the ones in the Philippines. We still talk occasionally to this day. So it was pretty fun. I noticed a previous ISA was actually having a birthday recently, and I reached out just to say happy birthday. And this is what it looks like. So that was their response, just from wishing them a happy birthday and whatnot. And, it brings me to this because it upsets me when I see people talking about the ISAs that they can get for $2 an hour. And I see people talking about the way that they're treating their ISAs. And basically people tend to treat inside sales agents like tools and not like people, especially when they're virtual. And I'm not a big fan of that. So I am a big fan of leverage, right? Especially when it involves the who as the leverage. But the who's, they're people. And you need to understand that. Just because they're in another country does not give anyone the right to treat them bad, to yell at them, or anything like that. So anyways, that's just one of my frustrations that I see sometimes. But the cost of living in the Philippines is lower than the US, but it's not zero. So if your goal is to keep your inside sales agent poor, they will do the same to you. You should write that down, because people constantly ask, where can I get a cheap ISA? Where can I get an ISA for under $4, under $5, whatever it is? But again, if you're doing this and your whole business model revolves around them staying poor, they're going to keep you poor. It's just how it works. Had I in the position to hire, to train, to support the ISAs I did, I wouldn't be doing this call today. I mean, they're equally responsible for me being on this call today, even when they didn't work out, which I didn't enjoy firing them or take that lightly. I try to do every single firing myself because I did most of the hiring. But every time I had to let someone go, it sucked, right? Because I didn't know what that meant for them. I didn't know what that meant in their life. And so I may not have known them very well, especially the ones we started scaling very quickly. But almost every time I had to fire somebody, it was my fault. Either I made a bad hire or I didn't provide the right training. I feel like looking at it that way kind of gave me an edge in the space, right? Because I tried to take as much of that responsibility as I could. Let's see. Oh, that's the same, same slide. Anyways, I say almost because there are scammers out there. There are tons of scammers and they have all sorts of methods to take your money and make it look like they're trying to do the work, right? The scammers are good too. And they have multiple monitors, multiple computers. So your screenshot software won't find the issues. They have mouse jiggler apps that will literally make their mouse look like it's moving. So your other apps won't catch them. Basically, if they want to game the system, they usually can. So they have different softwares that will literally go to the next call and hang up on the last one. I think that was actually a macro, but still, they have tricks. I had one ISA one time actually taking the data that we were getting, right? Our listings, or our listing leads, I should say, they were taking the data and they were selling it to other clients. And we caught it almost immediately because of the systems that I had set up, but that's one I didn't feel bad about letting go. Other times I noticed things weren't right. ISAs weren't performing, and we would dive into the data, the screenshots, the information, what's going on. And turns out they were falling asleep. And that actually happened with some of our best ISAs from time to time. And I'm telling you all of this because if you think it's just about going out and grabbing somebody for a low hour or dollar per hour rate, it's so much more. There's so much more to this. It wasn't super common that they would fall asleep, but they have families. And so when they're working on the East Coast hours, that's the exact opposite for them. So for instance, I had one ISA, he would work from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. their time because he was dedicated, right? He loved his job, but he would also stay late sometimes to make evening follow-ups, which I always tried to send him home when I'd see that. But he would go and he would get his kids ready for school after that in the morning, and he'd run some errands. He'd get back around 9 and 10 a.m., take a nap until the kids were finished with school, and he'd come back to work later on that evening. Basically said he loved what he did and he made up for sleep on the weekends so he could spend more time with his family. And I'm not telling you this so you feel bad for ISAs. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that they're people, right? These are people with lives, with families. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have fears. Sometimes those fears are caused by the ISA director because they're worried they're going to lose their job because they know their numbers aren't up to par. So it's a big responsibility. But why do we use ISAs? What's the point, right? It's leverage. It's leverage. If we can hire 3 ISAs to handle calls, and I can generate more leads and be solely responsible for taking listings as an agent and just writing offers, that's the dream, right? That's why you hire an ISA. That's why your clients, if you're a marketer here, that's why they're hiring you. It's because they want that leverage. The entire point of using an inside sales agent or even building an ISA department is to leverage your time and to leverage your results. So let's do some math on this because I know there's some people that are a little nervous about spending money with ISAs and whatnot. And that's understandable, but think about this, okay? If you're in the market, just an average US market where the home price in the US is 249, 250,000, whatever it is, and you have an ISA who's crushing it, right? Let's say they're making contact with 60% of your leads and you generate 100 leads for $10 a piece, so $1,000 total. Now, the ISA talks to 60% and they set appointments with 10% of those. And that's the immediate appointments. A lot of people forget there's follow-ups, right? So 15% of those also end up as follow-ups. So that means you have 6 appointments for the immediate future out of those 100 leads and 9 potential future appointments, right? And here's the math on the screen so you guys can see that. And you can screenshot that if you want it. I'll pause for a sec. But basically, you generate 100 leads for $10 a piece, right? That's $1,000. The ISA talks to 60%, sets of appointments with 10%, retains 15 for follow-up. It means you have 6 appointments, 9 potential future appointments. And if we're focused only on the immediate, 6 appointments, right? And half of those appointments show up, right? 50% show up rate, which is not great, not terrible, but it's pretty common. Of those 3 appointments, your agent or you as the agent convert 1 to a buyer or seller, right? Now, assuming the ISA does well with the follow-up on the others, they're going to move the 3 that didn't show up over to the 12 now, and they're going to try and set half of those into appointments in the next year, right? In the next 12 months. It's not immediate. Can't always look at the immediate. But let's say they do that. They get those 12, you meet with half of them again, right? You close 1 deal again. So keep in mind that the automated follow-up on this one can also increase these rates, but we're just assuming ISA right here, and we're not going super deep, right? If your ISA is being paid $2,000 per month, that means your cost for the leads plus the ISA would be, for 100 leads plus the ISA for the year, would be $25K, right? And you close those 2 deals, that's $15,000 back. But if we buy another $1,000 worth of leads each month so that they have leads to call every month, because that would make sense if you're hiring them for the year, right? Now we're up to $36,000 in annual costs. And that's for the ISA and for the leads. But the ISA now has 1,100 more leads to work with. And let's just assume the agent, the ISA, no one has improved their skills for the entire year, and they continue at the current rate that they're going. Doing the numbers for the year, let's say again, they speak to 60%. A 60% connection rate is nothing, like that's again, not amazing, not terrible. It's pretty average, pretty good. And out of that 1,100 leads, that's 660 conversations. So they set 10 of those to, or 10% to immediate appointments, which would be 66 appointments. And then they have 15% that go to follow-up appointments, right? Is everybody following me? I know we're getting into math. Let me see something in the chat if you guys are still following along here. Okay, cool. Want to make sure I didn't like lag out or something. So anyways, they've got that 66 appointments plus the 15% follow-up, 99 potential appointments on the follow-up out of the 1,100 leads, right? So you meet with the other half, you close 1 in every 3 again, okay? Now that's 11 deals. But the ISA kept working the no-shows from those 33 appointments that didn't show up and kept working the future appointments. And again, half of those eventually booked to an appointment, right? And you met with 66 and you've still been skipping script practice and role playing, and you still close 1 in every 3, right? 33% close, which again, that's not very high. It's not terrible if you are working with an ISA that you're not familiar with, but it should definitely be much higher. So, and again, that's going to bring you down to 22 deals. So your initial cost for the 2 sales totaling $15,000 would be like $36K if you hire the ISA for the year and you pay for the leads up front for the year. But your total commission on the 29 deals from consistency and follow-up is $217,500 out of $36,000 invested. I'm wondering if anybody's been following the math because we're missing some deals there. Did you notice that? So fallout rate. This is something you need to plan with when you're using ISAs. A lot of times people just assume that every deal is going to close. And just because you sign somebody doesn't mean they're going to close, right? And just because they get to an offer accepted or a listed property doesn't mean they're going to close. So always calculate your fallout rate. If the agent doesn't know their fallout rate, use 10%. If they do, you can use their current rate. Or if you don't know your rate, you should look it up. My rate was about 4%, is about what my fallout rate was. Basically, about 4% of everything I put under contract would end up falling out sooner or later. 96% would close. So those numbers, surprising to anybody? They seem high, low, because on the 1,200 leads, that's actually only a 2.4% conversion rate, right? And when you look at anything on internet leads, what do they say? 1 to 3%, 1% to 3%. Top producers aim for 3 to 5, right? They're not trying to be average on their conversion rates. And I've actually seen teams that had an excess of 7% on their conversion rates, right? So even if the agent was converting at a 1% rate, that'd still be 12 deals totaling $90,000, almost triple the $36,000 investment into the ISA and the leads if you're generating them yourself, right? But the best part is you don't actually have to, the sales price for that home was $250,000, just median home price value. If it's above 250, you're going to have way better, way better results. But anyways, best part about all this, you don't have to pay the $36,000 up front. If you have an ISA, it costs you $2,000 a month because you're paying a lot, and you have leads costing you $10 a piece because they're $10 a piece in your area, or maybe you're new to this, like that's still $36,000. That's $3,000 a month, and you have your ISA, right? And so you're going to start to make that money back as you go. Typically, disclaimer, I'm not saying you will make money for sure, right? As a marketer, if you're a marketer here, what does that mean for you? Because I know we've got a mix of marketers and agents. As a marketer, $2,000 a month for an ISA, right? They're paying $2,000 a month for an ISA. Or I'm sorry, you're paying $2,000 a month for an ISA. But if you can get the ISA to work for 5 clients because you run an agency, now you're paying $2,000 for an ISA who's running with 5 clients. And as an agency owner, I assume you know what you're doing with ads. And so you can get your lead cost down to $5 or so, right? And you can improve the conversion rates. And now you can charge the client, I don't know, $750, $1,250. So let's say you charge them $750 for the to do the ads. You charge them $1,250 for the inside sales agent, right? So the client pays you $2,000 a month plus ad spend, which you're now getting $5 leads because you know what you're doing. You've been doing it a while. You're good at it. You handle the ISA training. You handle the systems and the processes, taking all the work off the agent. And if you're doing this right, the agent now pays $26,400 for the same amount in commissions. As an agent, it like logically, it makes a lot of sense to work with a marketing agency. You should be working together on that, right? But a lot of the agencies are having issues. And that's why, we're doing this is because we're trying to dive into some of that. We're trying to dive into the agents who are wanting to do this for themselves, because if you're doing it for yourself, it does take a lot of time and work out of your day, right? But guess what? If you're working with an agency, you don't have to do any of the work. You don't have to manage, hire, train, any of that stuff. You have more free time and it's less expensive to you. And the funny part is most agents would pay the full $36,000 to make $217,500. So if you're an agency who's offering those services and you're able to provide those results, it's a win-win for everybody. As an agent, who here would pay $36,000 for almost $250,000 in closings? I'm sure most of us would do that. Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right? So think about it. Your ISA costs are covered by 5 clients paying $1,250 or $6,250 total, right? If you're a marketing agency. And you have another VA doing the ads for you for, let's say, $500 a month, right? And so that means that you make $3,750 plus the $6,250, or basically $10,000 a month. And your cost on the ISAs plus the VA for the ad management or whatnot is $2,500. And then you've got $5,000 or $500 in software. So now you're spending $3,000 to provide the services and you're making $7,000. So basically, if you do this right, you basically get a $10,000 a month situation with 5 clients. And you're providing a valuable service to your client, receiving referrals because they're happy and they're growing organically. But that's not what happens right now. That's not what's happening, right? For a lot of you. And that's why we're here today, is we're going over all of this stuff. But that's what we need to look at. Okay. So let's dive into the issues everybody wants to cover. And that's, why is the ISA not converting leads for your client, right? I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. Your ISA and their results are in direct correlation with your ability to train and lead them. Make sense? So, as your own personal ISA director, you have 3 jobs. Okay. Enable them. That is your first job. As the ISA director, is to enable your inside sales team to do their job. And this starts with the interview process, the beginning, right? Picking the right people, enabling the right person. That is key. When you start to make that hiring decision, you should know that this is the best available person within your budget who has some level of experience, a proven track record, and they're driven to succeed. Like, if you can't say that about the person that you're hiring, you need to focus on finding the talented person then. Okay. Find the person who's driven. Find the person who has great tonality when you get on the phone with them. That's something you can hear right away, right? Are they able to match you in rapport? Are they mirroring you at all? Find somebody who knows how to hold a conversation. Take the pressure off the interview when you do these, so you can really dig in, okay? So do multiple interviews. Make sure that you do that, because if the first person is the best person, like when you get on the phone, you're like, oh man, this person's amazing, I'm going to hire this one, and they're the best person, like they're still going to be the best person after you interview the other 3 or 4, right? Or maybe they won't, because maybe you'll find somebody who's better, but you're not going to find out if you just hire the first person you talk to every time. Okay. You have to be cautious when you're hiring. If you hire a lazy person who wants to scam you, that's on you. That's on us as the directors, right? You're the gatekeeper. As an agent, as a marketing agency, whatever it is, you're the gatekeeper. It's your job not to hire scammers. Surprisingly, it's more difficult than you would expect to spot them, especially because, again, they can seem great on an interview, and they tend to prey on people who are emotional or people who are, trying to provide some cool opportunities. Oh man. Anyways, people that want to provide them with an opportunity, people that ignore the data and go off their gut. Yeah, that's where you have to be careful. Know yourself. If that's you, like, put a note in front of your computer when you're doing these interviews or something, right? I mean, I trust my gut, but only right up until the numbers, and then it's out. The numbers are key to making sure you don't get scammed. So, quick story. I was in a hiring spree. This was a few years back. We needed people fast, and I was bringing on 5 to 10 new ISAs a week. And at a certain point, when you have that many people on your team, I think we were approaching 40 people at that time. It's hard to distinguish who is who simply by their voice. And people kind of, like, some people sound familiar. Obviously, like, some of the callers sound different. They stand out and you can completely identify them. But that was not the case here, because I had an ISA that I had fired at one point, and he wasn't ready to be done with the team, apparently. So somehow he found out we were hiring, and he re-interviewed under a different name. And we hired him because he was actually good on the phones. Like, he was good. He was great in the interview, but the problem was he would game the system. So one day I got a message from my quality control assistant, who was another virtual assistant. And she was like, hey, this guy sounds just like this guy who you just fired, right? And she sends me over the audio, and I listen to these, and I mean, it's the exact same voice. And so we confronted him, found out, yep, it was. And so we let him go. But anyways, the point of that is you need to find the right people, right? If you're going to enable people, make sure you're enabling the right people, because that's one of the biggest pieces. Sorry, guys, dry throat. But yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces, is making sure that you have the right person. Okay. So when you have the right person, then you have to enable them to do their job. And this is something when I'm working with clients right now, marketers and whatnot. This is one of the biggest agency owner issues that I see is we go out, we find this ISA, or we use a placement company to find us an ISA, and we plug them into our system and call it done. Or we use their system and we call it done. Time to go convert. Time to go get some listings, right? And we're asking them to do the hard work. We're asking the ISAs to dive in and go for it. Okay. But we only have something like Go High Level, right? Or we have 2 to 3 different dialers, or worse, we have them calling one by one on some voice thing, VoIP or whatnot, right? Your ISA needs to have something that enables them to do their job. They're never going to be a top performer on a makeshift system. So the more time that they are not on the phones, the more time you are holding them back and not enabling them to be great at what they're doing. This kills productivity, right? If they're doing like a click to dial, you can't do click to dial. It just doesn't work, right? There's not enough, or there's too much, I should say, time between the calls. So you can't use like a click to dial system. And that's basically what Go High Level is, if I remember right. You can't call all of the different systems at once. You have to go into each individual client, go in there and make the calls. Now, if you're an agency owner, I recommend VanillaSoft. That is going to be like the best bet for you if you're an agency owner. If you are an agent, it's probably going to be Mojo. Okay. So write this down though. Your system needs to allow the ISA to call through leads without having to log in and out of other systems. It's simple, right? Or at least it seems like a simple thing. But it seems like a lot of people are also doing this, where they have the ISA using this CRM, and then this CRM, and then this email system. And there's so many different pieces, right? And for the ISA, like, I mean, they're callers, right? That's what they do. They want to get on the phone. That's who you're hiring. You're hiring people who want to get on the phone. Why the two softwares for agency owners and agents? Because as an agent, you don't need to call through multiple clients. And that's what VanillaSoft enables you to do. As a marketer, you do need that for your ISA. So you would want something that allows you to do that. And Mojo won't do that. You'll have to go in and out of stuff all the time. But yeah, so your system needs to allow the ISA to call and consistently call, right? I mean, you wouldn't bring, I don't know, a Volkswagen Bug to a Formula One race, right? That wouldn't make any sense. It's not going to have any chance. Like your ISA, like they're there to drive business. So you want to make sure that there's nothing holding them back. Okay. Make sure it's not click to dial. Make sure it's a system that makes sense. Make sure that they can use it. And I'm not going to dive into all the different systems because there's so many these days that you could use. But those are the two that I would recommend right now. So they need to be able to identify who they're calling, right? And these are things like if you're using a different dialer, make sure it can at least do this, okay? They need to be able to identify who they are calling on behalf of, if they're calling for multiple agents or agencies. Because if they stumble into the intro of the call, like quality is going to drop so fast. Like who fumbles the beginning of a call when you're talking to somebody? If you get a call and you say hello and they go, who does that? Telemarketers, right? Not always, but occasionally. That's a clear indication that you have a telemarketer calling you. And what do? We hang up. We get on to the next one, right? So you don't want them fumbling at the beginning. They need to know, hey, this is Matt calling with the real estate company down the road, right? That's who they are. And they need to know who the person on the other end of the line is. So make sure that that information is getting to them at least at the same time the call is being picked up, if not earlier. So they need the information and they need the script. So the script, if your system allows it, like that's a really helpful thing to have, but you can also have them print it off and post it next to their computer, right? Just have them send you a picture so you know, like they actually have their script in front of them. That was one thing for me, is everybody always had to have their script in front of them, because your script is your roadmap, right? Like that's what you use. That's how you keep from getting off course. You shouldn't need it, but like if something comes up that throws you off course, it needs to be there. That's how you keep the call going, right? Think of it like Google Maps or Waze, and you're driving down the road and the route you normally take is closed. There's construction. You didn't know that, right? You drive that way every day. So which route should you take now? Well, you pull up your phone, right? You find an alternate route, not a big deal. But if you didn't have your phone, if your phone was dead, like that's going to delay you. It's not going to like be a huge deal. You're not going to never get home, but it is going to delay you. But the difference is when an ISA is calling and they don't have those scripts, they don't have that in front of them. If they have a small, like something throw them off, they don't have time to make it back, right? That person is going to go, okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and move on. Okay. So you need to make sure that they have the ability to see the scripts, whether again, they're printing them out or your system does it. All right. And the next part is going to be fun. You need to train your ISA. How many people have bought a trained ISA, or whatever you want to say? They've had an ISA that's already trained, placed in their business before. I know that's pretty common right now. And usually it seems like the issue becomes, how do we make them better, right? Because we didn't train them in the first place. Eden, yep. A couple people have, okay. So, yeah, I'm sure there's times where it works. Most of the people I'm working with haven't told me that. So they need to have a training curriculum. You need to have a training curriculum, right? If you're running the ISA department, or if you're training them for your own real estate business, you need to have a training curriculum, right? Something that they go through to get started in making the calls. Like if you have them calling on day one, you're probably wasting leads. And worse yet, you're setting up the ISA for failure. Okay. Like it is our job when we hire these people to provide them the opportunity and the ability to actually have success. If you bring them into a broken system and then you have to fire them, like they might have left another job to get that gig, right? That's not fair. So you need to do what it takes to build a training curriculum and put that in front of them. If your ISA comes in, they pick up the script, they watch 10 minutes of how to use the dialer, that's like training inside of the dialer system anyways, and it's not even specific to the system you're having them use, that's not training. ISAs are made. They're not born. People aren't just natural ISAs. So you may be hiring somebody who's had experience before, and that's great, but like you need to make sure that they're trained to work in your system, that they're trained to work the type of leads that you're handling, and that they know all of the objection handlers. The objection handlers are key, okay? And you can't do any of that if you don't have training. Now, I've never had an ISA that I didn't have to train, right? There have been several that were less training than others, but I've never hired an ISA that didn't need to be trained, ever. And I mean, I've hired them all through the payment spectrums, okay? So there have been several, like I said, less training than others, but I've had to train every single one to some level, right? Until I trained one that would actually start training them. That was something that I did later on. And yeah, guess who trained that person, right? So your ISAs, they also need a coach. They need somebody that's going to help them grow, somebody who's going to help them stay accountable, to hold them accountable. Like if you want a winning ISA team, you need a winning coach. And you are that coach. It's you as the agency owner, you as the agent, you're their coach. Okay. So do you know their scripts? Because you need to. Like you need to know the scripts so you can make sure the person is getting the transfer or the appointment is going to have a shot at closing it, right? You need to know that those scripts, so when they mess it up, you can recognize it. Because if they're off script and you're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? Why are we not converting as many? Why do I get so many people that are not the decision makers, whatever it is, right? If you don't know the script, you're not going to recognize what's going on when you go through and listen to the calls. So how many people know the script that their ISA is currently using? You know it backwards and forwards. Couple? Okay. So if you brought in an ISA director that you snagged, let's say you snagged them from a competitor whose numbers were amazing. Okay. They were better than you. Like then it's fine. You don't need to know the scripts then, but that's basically the only exception. If you're the ISA director, you need to know them to be able to coach them. Okay. And finally, this is the biggest piece, in my opinion, when it comes to enabling them. Hire for the role. Do not have your ISA doing the admin work for your business. They're completely different roles. Okay. Completely different. And I understand trying to stretch a dollar, but like that is not enabling your ISA to do what they're good at, to gain momentum doing what they're good at. Right. And some of them will like volunteer to do it because like they want extra hours and whatnot, but train them better, get them better on the script so you can pay them more. Because it's going to be difficult to maintain that momentum or to gain any momentum if they're constantly switching from making calls to handling paperwork. And here's something that I've noticed. Tell me if you've noticed it as well. Most amazing salespeople don't like paperwork. They don't like to do it. They oftentimes skip it, forget it, don't do it wrong, right? So if you're hiring somebody for their ability to sell on the phone, don't have them going and doing other tasks as well, right? It's not their personality style. And if your ISA loves the admin work because it's a break from the phones, like I've had that happen, right? You probably have the wrong ISA. And that's the reality of it, right? Their numbers are probably going to be subpar to somebody who's really producing. So you'll likely not make a more expensive mistake than hiring the wrong ISA. Okay. If you put the wrong ISA in your business, as an agent, it's a little bit more forgiving. As an agency owner, it can be catastrophic because you could go hire that ISA, assume they're doing everything right, and lose 4 or 5 clients that were paying you monthly, right? And then that one hire costs you half your business or a piece of your business. Okay. But it'll cost you more than that because it's going to cost you leads. As an agent, it'll cost you leads. It'll cost you reputation. It can cost you clients as an agency owner. And obviously, however much you pay the ISA, right? Your ISA should want to be on the phone closing sales and making money, right? If you have them running ads, creating posts, answering customer service emails, like you're hindering their ability to do their job. And what is this whole topic I'm covering today? Enabling your ISA, right? Or this piece of it, enabling your ISA, right? So let's talk a little bit about developing your ISA, okay? How do you develop an ISA? You sit on the sideline and you just yell, "Go sport," right? Is that how you coach them? No, we just covered coaching. But you have to play to their strengths. And I've made the mistake in hiring in the past where I hired somebody who shouldn't be doing calls, right? And I jumped on a meeting with them and I asked them, what do you like doing for work? Like, do you enjoy the calls? What does your perfect day look like in your mind? Right? Guess what? It wasn't calling. I didn't ask up front. I started asking that in the interviews because you don't want to hire the wrong person. So I moved them to an admin role and we had an open spot for them and they crushed it there. They did great and they were much happier, right? Because it's something they enjoyed. People who don't like being on the phones and making those sales calls are going to be rough to have working for you, because that's a rough gig, right? And you constantly need to be looking out for your ISA. Their job is not easy. You need to be helping them to develop, helping them to become more talented, and helping them to grow in your organization. And some days as a coach, some days as a boss, some days as a cheerleader. There are days when people just are not picking up the phones, right? There are days when people just keep saying no. There are sucky days when you're an ISA, and as someone who's been on basically my own ISA, right? I can tell you being consistent is not easy. It's mentally exhausting at times. Constantly being told no, being yelled at, being cussed up one side and down the other. So sure, it's not every call, but like rude people are there. And when you're making 400 to 700 dials a day, it happens often enough, okay? So you have to be there for your ISA. A huge part of coaching is being available to them. When your ISA has questions, right? If your callers can't reach you when they deal with something, they can't improve. So they need a way to be able to reach you quick. They get an objection they haven't heard, they need a way to reach out to you. The next part about developing them is accountability. But the right ISA, the right person in the role, enjoys being held accountable. They enjoy having like an expectation and surpassing those. They enjoy having goals. They enjoy finding issues in their skills and improving them. You should be going over contacts to set or transfer rates with them, right? So the number of contacts to the number of set appointments or transfers that are live transfers, you should be keeping track of that. What are they doing? What's their current set to or contact to set rate, right? What's their current contact to live transfer rate? Once you have that, what's their set to met rate? Out of the number of people that they set appointments with, how many are they meeting with? And if you're an agent, then you want met to signed, right? Because as an agent, that's going to be a really key one for you. So you know how many contacts they have. Again, this is going back to earlier when I was giving you the example. We said 100 leads, they had a 60% contact rate, okay? Out of the contact rate, they had, 60% contact rate. And then they had the contact to set rate. And then they had the set to met rate. And then the met to signed rate, okay? So you need to know those numbers always. We don't have to wait for feedback from the agents about leads. If you're a marketing agency, like your ISA is the first point of contact. If you have questions about your lead quality, the right ISA is going to be able to tell you if your lead quality changes from a new ad or from a new offer. They can tell you this offer is easier to convert or it's more difficult to convert. And that is really valuable information. So as you're developing them as a caller, like they can be a big asset in developing your offers. Working with your ISA to improve your offer, ask them to keep an eye on things. Are they improving? Hey, I'm doing something right now. Are the leads getting easier? Are they getting harder? Are they improving? Are they not improving? Give them some ownership in the task so they can, well, take the ownership, right? Take it and run with it. They're an asset to your business. And if you don't feel that way, you either don't have the right ISA or you're probably not enabling them to succeed. Okay. So you can't develop your ISA to their potential if you are not providing them with what they need. The moment you hire your first employee, ISA, VA, etc., you also begin to set the tone for the company's culture. And this is something that is missed when people have ISA departments often. You have to set that tone, okay? Culture is key. When you start building out your ISA department, you need to make sure the ISAs feel like they're part of something. You need to introduce them to each other, give them a way to communicate with each other. And you should be encouraging that they're doing so, right? With my ISAs, I always had multiple groups on Skype because Skype's where we typically did the initial reach outs for interviews and whatnot, and everybody was there. So we had multiple Skype groups, and that's where we'd all communicate. And if they were in circle prospecting, then I'd have them in a circle prospecting group, right? If they were in expired, then I'd have them in expired groups. And they were not alone, and they knew that, right? They were grouped based on their roles, and they were part of something bigger than themselves. They were part of a culture or a family or a team or whatever you want to call it. I even created little logos and came up with cool team names for everybody in each of the different departments, just to, make sure they know like they're a part of the team. And this is actually like really great when you start to grow, because it's difficult to keep in touch with somebody, or everybody, I should say. So what I used to do is every morning, first thing they did when they came in is they dropped a hello in the Skype group chat. Then when 9 o'clock came around and I knew that they were supposed to be calling, I just went in there. It was like, okay, who's there on time, who's not, right? Pretty simple. So little things like that can provide little hacks as well. When you find the right ISA, when you put in the time and the effort to train them, you build an incredible culture like within your organization. Guess what sucks? When they leave. You need to focus on the retention of your your high performing talent. And how do we do that? Right? I'm sure a few of you have got your own ideas and whatnot. So there are a lot of things that we can do. There's a lot of things that come into play. And if we're being honest, you can spot a lot of the issues that you're going to face with somebody in the recruiting phase. Okay. So part of retention goes back to that hiring piece, right? But we're going to pretend that you've done all of that right so far, and the right person is now in your organization. And it's time to make sure they don't ever want to leave. Okay. So training and opportunity. Are they growing in their role inside of your organization? Are they improving in their skills? Are they developing their talents? Are they developing their skills? Are they learning things that they didn't know before? Are you providing them value other than just an hourly wage? Right? Intangible things, not necessarily bonuses, et cetera. Like that's always helpful, but talented people want more than just money. Okay. This should be part of like the value proposition when you're bringing them in, something that you're providing them in the hiring process. Why do they want to work with you? Why is it important that they pick you? Right? And some of you might be thinking like, why would I need to provide them a reason to work with me? I'm paying them. And if that's the case, you probably haven't found a talented ISA yet, because they're in demand, right? Talented people have opportunities, and a lot of them have a job when you meet them, but they're looking for something a little bit different. And that's, what we're trying to figure out in that interview, right? Making sure they're a good fit. So are they growing in your company? And if so, what comes next? Right? Is there a next level for them? Or do you have no plan to ever pay them more than their current wage? Are they taking a job that will never result in more? We've had multiple levels for our ISA department. So people could start in an entry level, just, cold prospecting. And if they did well, they could move up to expireds for sale by owners. They can move up to a manager, trainer, whatever. Or they could go to different lead sources. So there was different opportunities, but you have to think about that from that standpoint. What is their opportunity? Are they somebody who's coming in and trying to make a buck now? Are they somebody who wants a long-term career, right? We had people do it. Some tried, some weren't ready for it. The moving up in the ladder, right? Some just wanted the entry position, okay? Because they were in school, or they were, working another part-time job, and they just needed a way to make money from home. And that was okay, right? But the worst part of retention is when you need to let them go. So you need to be evaluating your ISAs. You need to be keeping track of their numbers, keeping track of their results, okay? Is this person hitting the KPIs that I've set up for them? Is this person getting better or worse? The screenshot software and all that's fun, but unless you're creeping on your ISA, like the reason you look at those is because something in the numbers is off. So you have to know the numbers, okay? You need to be looking at the numbers daily, spotting issues, spotting trends, spotting wins. Okay, acknowledging their wins is huge. When your ISA does well, let them know. Let them know they did awesome. Acknowledgement can be a big part of retention. Okay, but back to the numbers. Are they hitting their dials per day, right? What is the minimum dials per day that they need to be hitting? Do they have enough leads to hit that number of dials that you have set for them? Does your ISA have too many leads to get real results? Like they can't go deep, they can't follow up because there's just lead after lead after lead after lead and they don't have time, right? Remember the example at the front? Like majority of your appointments often are in the follow-up. The higher quality appointments are going to come from the follow-up, the longer term follow-up, the relationships. Your ISAs are going to be build relationships. And if they're not, you probably don't have the right person, because building the relationship is one of the parts that's tough, really tough to train. You want to find somebody who knows how to do that, right? You want to find somebody that when you get on the phone, they start doing it. Okay. Running an ISA department isn't easy. And it's not something just anyone is going to be able to do. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. But if you can get it right, you can grow big, right? You can grow your team big. You can grow your agency big. You can do all kinds of stuff. I'm going to show you the self-eval form, and this is a really cool form. Okay, so what this does is this basically allows the ISA to go through their own calls and evaluate themselves, right? So it makes them think, like, what are they doing, right? How well did you stick to your script? Rate it 1 to 5. What script being 1, 5 being perfect? Did you ask open-ended questions, right? Did you assume that they were going to work with you? Like we've had ISAs that were really timid and they didn't actually like think they were going to get the appointment most of the time. And it came off in their calls. And so we want to make sure they're assumptive in their closing. Were you asked anything you were not prepared to answer? That one's huge, because if they have stuff that they don't know how to answer, we need to know that, because we can't fix it if we don't know. Was there anything on this call that caught you off guard? Kind of a different way of asking the same question. If you were to do this exact call again, what specifically would you adjust? So that's, trying to find, or trying to give them the opportunity to look for opportunity. Okay. How many times did you close for the appointment? This one's funny because you'll find ISAs all of a sudden their numbers shoot up, right? Because they haven't been asking for the appointments. Did you get the appointment, right? So they're going through, they should be doing this basically on 1 to 3 calls a day, depending on where they're at in their career or whatnot, but basically just something to keep them focused on improvement. So I will share this with everybody here. I'll send that out in the email. And yeah, with that, all right, perfect. Well, I hope this has been helpful for everybody. If you have questions or you're interested in the training, feel free to reach out to me and I will connect with everybody later. Have a great day.